How's it going, guys? It's Doc. In this video, we are going to talk about why Bitcoin is going to hit new all-time highs in 2025. Truly do believe that Bitcoin, that high was not $109,000. We're going to talk about that in this video. We're going to work through my thesis. But before we get started, welcome back to the channel. My name's Doc. Throughout the day and early morning, I'm a resident physician. And at night, I take you guys on my crypto and investing journey. As you guys are coming in, give me a quick like, comment down below. Where do you think Bitcoin is going this cycle? I think before we kind of talk about where it's going, we need to talk about like Bitcoin's story, right? December 2024, Bitcoin hits, it cracks 100 and everybody's super excited, right? Everybody's feeling really good. And then December 16th, 17th, the Fed chair comes out and at the FOMC meeting states, hey, for 2025, we're actually probably only going to have 2 rate cuts instead of the 4 that we were projecting. So obviously the market didn't like that and kind of puttered out a little bit. But then we come into 2025, Donald Trump takes office January 2nd, and markets start to rally again, right? The narrative is that Trump, he's pro-business, we're going to cut out all this excess government spending, and we're really going to make a more efficient market, right? At the same time, people are talking about like, hey, rates are going to come down. We know we just had the FOMC meeting, but things were looking better. The other thing that happened January 20th is Gary Gensler, the former head of the SEC, right? The chair of the SEC, who has been very anti-crypto for the past several years. He stepped down, right? And that was a big deal. That really was a big deal because literally for 36, 48 months, he has just been wreaking havoc on the crypto market, right? I think we all remember he very much had this, you're guilty without a trial type approach. He was literally going after companies, and he's on air saying this, that, hey, it's okay if we get a couple cases wrong. We need to keep our foot on the gas. So he's out of there. This was very much seen as a win for all of crypto. And honestly, it is, right? And we're going to talk more about the SEC chair here in just a second. And also stay toward the end of the video because I'm going to tell you exactly where I think Bitcoin is going to go this cycle. I'm going to give you a little sneaky play at the end of the video. So Gary Gensler's out. We now have a new pro-crypto SEC chair. But what's kind of happened these past couple months? Well, a lot of folks really thought these tariffs was going to be just a bargaining tactic, right? You've probably seen this all over, the traditional media, traditional news outlets. Everybody, even Twitter, everybody was saying like, this is just a negotiating tactic. And to be blunt, because you guys know I tell it to you how it is, I think we all thought that this was like just that. We really thought, hey, this is not gonna happen, right? Well, the deadline slowly approached. April 4th happens, and we realize, oh no, the administration is actually very, very serious about these tariffs. Then we all know what's happened the past couple of weeks. Stock market has crashed. Bitcoin falls back down to the 70s. And we've kind of been at the mercy of the administration, whether it's, random tweets from President Trump or Scott Bessent, coming on, making all these different, feels like media rounds, right? The past couple days, right, the market's rallied because they're saying, hey, we're going to ease off on the China tariffs. And that's really the turning point for this video, right? In our Discord, which is completely free, link down below. We're building an awesome community. Check it out. It's going to be down below. We said we need a sentiment shift. We need something to change the narrative before Bitcoin can really rocket back up to new all-time highs in 2025. And it's my opinion that we got that earlier this week. Right? I think in some ways, and I'm really trying to stay apolitical, whether you like Trump, hate Trump, it's a lose-lose, in my opinion, to kind of tell you my opinions. But whether you like him or you hate him, he kind of tipped his hand in a lot of ways, right? He said like, hey, we are, the tariffs, they're not going to be 145% on China. He also said like, we don't want to hardball anybody. So that was very reassuring, especially when you kind of start to think like this stock market crash and Bitcoin crash, it kind of felt manufactured in a lot of ways, right? Specifically with these trade deficits and tariff talk. So in my opinion, Trump kind of tipped his hand a little bit and said like, hey, we are going to ease off these tariffs. And what do you know? The market rebounds, right? That was honestly the sentiment shift that I think we needed. Well, here's the thing. There's more gas in the tank for what can happen. We're going to talk about my price prediction here in just a second. Again, if you're getting any value out of this, hit the like buttons, comment down below. Where do you think Bitcoin is going this cycle? So we talked about the tariffs. Trump's letting off on those. We also have rate cuts coming, and I think they're coming sooner than later. So the next FOMC meeting is May 7th. I do not think we're getting rate cuts in May, but what I think could happen in May is quantitative tightening could stop, right? So at the last FOMC meeting, they slowed down quantitative tightening pretty significantly, right? They really did shorten it or reduce the rate at which they're offloading mortgage-backed securities and treasury bonds. I think in May, they could say that this will completely stop. And that's really, really good for crypto. Specifically, it's really good for like altcoins, right? Before we can have an altcoin season, we need QT to stop. For those of the folks who don't know, QT, the way that I like to think of it, it kind of acts as a vacuum and can suck excess liquidity out of the market, right? So with QT stopping, that's good for risk on assets. The other thing is, so I think that's going to happen in May, right? Whether it happens in May or June, it's close. We really are on the precipice of this happening and happening very soon. The other thing is like rate cuts, they're also, we're knocking on the door, right? So I think we get our first rate cut in June. And I actually think we get 3 to 4 rate cuts this year. Now, obviously, risk on assets love cheap money, right? It, in essence, what it does is it floods the market with liquidity, right? So we said QT kind of acts to suck liquidity out of the system. Well, lowering rates is one way that we can flush the system with cash, right? And we all know, based off the 2021 cycle, that when we have cheap money, things tend to do well. So I think we're going to get a couple rate cuts in 2025. One of the reasons is because Trump's kind of pressuring Fed Chair Powell. Now, here's the thing. I think rate cuts were coming regardless of what Trump was saying. And the reason that I think that is because all of this inflation data that we get, right? So the Fed, they love core PCE inflation. That's a metric that they really like to use to gauge where we're at with inflation. Because when inflation is high, it's really tough for the Fed to cut interest rates. But the opposite is also true. When interest rates are low, it's easier for the Fed to cut interest rates, okay? So inflation is coming down, right? It's coming down in a pretty significant way, right? Oil is coming down in price, right? Crude oil is roughly $60 a barrel, give or take a couple bucks. Oil is a huge contributor to inflation. And then the other, and technically it's the biggest contributor to inflation, is housing, right? So we know that housing's cooling off, and it has been cooling off. And the housing one, it's actually a super lagging metric, right? So we all know the past year, the housing market hasn't been great. That is now starting to show up in the inflation data. So inflation's coming down. It gives more ammunition to Jerome Powell and the rest of the chair to lower interest rates. And the interesting thing is, we said all this data that they love, it's very much it's in the rear view. It's backwards looking, or put differently, it is not forward looking, right? So the Fed, they kind of know like, hey, we need to start making cuts, because once the data starts to show up that the economy's falling down, we're probably too late, right? So they kind of need to preemptively make these cuts. I think the Fed chair, they're very, very important or smart group of folks. They know this, right? They're not stupid. So they know they're going to have to start making some preemptive cuts. We know the tariffs are coming down. There's two other really, really big catalysts that I think we have the green light for new all-time highs in 2025. One is the dollar's dropping. The DXY or Dixie, it's tanking. And we know that in these historic Bitcoin and crypto runs, we need a weak dollar. We have that right now. So that's good. The other thing is global liquidity is flying, right? So Colin Talks Crypto, if you don't follow him on Twitter, he's an awesome follow. He was kind of one of the first people to talk about, or rather map, global liquidity and how that is a leading indicator of where Bitcoin goes. So don't get lost in, hey, is it an 8-week offset or a 12-week offset? Direction is more important, okay? So we know global liquidity, it's at all-time highs, right? It's higher than what it was in the 2021 bull run. The other thing is, this is so important, the rate at which global liquidity is rising is also very steep, right? And that's how we see these explosive moves in Bitcoin, right? These days where we get $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 moves in Bitcoin, right? And here's the other wild thing. Just a couple of years ago, that would have been like a 50% move for Bitcoin, right? Because Bitcoin was traded in the $17,000, $18,000. So because all of those things, I am so confident that we are going to hit new all-time highs for Bitcoin in 2025. Now, obviously, I'm not a financial advisor. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't give you financial advice, but here's kind of what I'm thinking where we're going to go for the rest of the year. For all of the reasons that we just talked about, right? QT is going to stop. Rate cuts are incoming. Global liquidity is rising. The dollar's really low, and Trump is now starting to say, hey, this mess that we kind of manufactured in a lot of ways, again, I'm staying apolitical, he can turn that off with a couple tweets. So because of all of that, I do think we're getting new all-time highs. Okay, Doc, you're rambling. Where are we going with our price? Okay, I don't think we're hitting $200,000, right? I hope we do. I pray that I am wrong in that prediction. I don't think we're hitting $200,000. Don't get alarmed. This is not bad, and here's why. I personally think we're going to top out in the 130s to 140s. There is a possibility that we could have a blow-off top into the 160s, okay? My base case is that we're going to be 130s, 140s. Now, here is why alts are going to fly. In March of 2024, Bitcoin was $73,000 and Bitcoin dominance was in the low 50s, and your favorite alts, yes, I'm talking to you, your favorite alts skyrocketed. They were flying, okay? Now imagine $130,000 or $140,000 Bitcoin, i.e. 2x of where Bitcoin was March 2024. And also imagine Bitcoin dominance falls from the mid 60s to the low 50s. What that means is, layman terms, is a really high Bitcoin price and then folks rotating from Bitcoin to alts, right? That money transition is going to be huge and is going to pump your bags, like big time. Higher, I'm expecting higher highs for most alts than where they were in March of 2024. Okay. The other thing that very, very few people are talking about is the stable coins, USDT, USDC, right? There is so much money sitting on the sidelines, literally in stable coins, that once the market starts to heat up, this stable coin supply is going to plummet because they're also rotating into altcoins. Okay. So that is why I think I'm so confident to the point where I'm like doubling down and I am really starting to invest in alts that I truly believe in, right? Now, my strategy is I've been DCAing this whole time, right? When Bitcoin was in the 70s, when it was in the low 80s, I've been buying projects that I really, really do like. Now, I mentioned my Discord down below. It's a free Discord. We have nothing to sell you. We're building a rock solid community. Well, guess what? On Sunday, this Sunday, so I'm filming this Thursday morning, this Sunday, I'm going to be doing a private live stream for the Discord. And we're going to talk about a really sneaky way that you can leverage safe assets, i.e. Ethereum, regardless of what you think of Ethereum, it is a safe asset. It's the number 2 crypto. There's ETF inflows. It is going to hit. It's going to go back to 3,500. I really do believe that. And we're going to talk about a strategy that you can leverage Ethereum and then also leverage your entire altcoin bag. And I honestly believe make it a really easy 10x. The good thing is it's going to hedge you when the market eventually dips, because guess what? In 2026, Bitcoin is going to dip, right? So that's my thesis, where Bitcoin's going to go, why it can hit new all-time highs in 2025. I genuinely want to know. I read literally all of the comments. Where do you think Bitcoin's going? And if you kind of want to like continue the discussion a little bit, free Discord link is going to be down below. If you got any value out of this, hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on my next video.